The Madman!
It's my favorite part of the expansion cycle. It's the reveal season for the next expansion, United in Stormwind. For the Alliance! Alliance Pride, everyone. We're done with that smelly horde side for now. And if you log in, you will immediately get and be able to play with Flightmaster Dunger. 3 mana 3/3 legendary. Battlecry, choose a flight path and go dormant. Awaken with a bonus when you complete it. You choose one of 3 flight paths, either Westfall, in 1 turn summon a 2/2 adventurer with a random bonus effect. Ironforge, in 3 turns restore 10 health to your hero, or Eastern Plaguelands, in 5 turns deal 12 damage randomly split among enemies. There's a lot of options with it, and I think it's versatile enough to go into a bunch of cards, which is probably why they're giving it for free to everyone. Aggro could use Westfall or Eastern Plaguelands. If you're up against an aggro deck, you can just choose Ironforge and make them really sad. You can always just choose Westfall to get a 3 mana 5/5 dormant 1 on both the 3/3 and the 2/2. The 2/2 has a random bonus effect though, which is just generally good. Sorcerers Gambit, 1 mana, quest line. Cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward, draw a spell. So quest lines, like quests, begin in your hand. The second quest, you have to cast another Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. This time you discover a spell. So 6 spells afterwards, you get the real payoff. Questline, cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell again. Reward, Arcanist Dawngrasp. And Arcanist Dawngrasp is the 5 mana 7/7 Battlecry. For the rest of the game, you have spell damage +3. Currently, it seems to me unlikely for this to be good. You have to jump through a lot of hoops, and I'm not entirely sure how useful spell damage +3 is. Seems like it's easy to get stuck on any of the 3. Like sometimes you just don't have that Fire, Frost, or Arcane spell. The potential problem of just sticking this into your current spell mage is that your deck of Lunacy changes your spells to not necessarily Fire, Frost, and Arcane spells, so I don't think it even goes in there. So this would be a separate spell mage deck. And it would seem to me that Deck of Lunacy might have a higher payoff than Sorcerer's Gambit. You have Fire Sale, which is another new mage card. This features the tradable mechanic, and this is one of the better tradable cards being shown here. 4 mana, tradable, deal 3 damage to all minions. The way tradable works is, suppose you don't really like the card, or you'd rather fish for something else. For 1 mana, you can drag this card back into your deck and then just draw another card. As the mayor of Value Town, I am really looking forward to trading these cards. Maybe Trump trading will finally have a different meaning. The idea of tradable, I think, and the ideal part of tradable design is you can put this on tech cards, and if the specific situation doesn't come up, you can just trade them for a different card. And Fire Sale does fit that to some extent, because perhaps sometimes you do not want to deal 3 damage to all minions. Maybe your opponent's a control deck, maybe you are somehow winning on the board. Just trade that card away. Also, in the expansion reveal, they did mention something about an auction house, so it's possible that tradable will also have some synergy to it. The other cool thing about tradable is, I've always theorized, is 1 mana draw a card good? Would you include that in a few decks that wanted to fish for cards? I think my conclusion was maybe sometimes in really extreme combo decks. So you could fill out your deck with a bunch of tradable cards, and then effectively whenever you draw the tradable card, you can just pay 1 mana and trade it. Yes, you might draw it again later, but I don't know if that's even bad. You can just pay 1 mana and trade it again. So let's go back to the quest lines here. The other quest line shown was the Demon Seed for Warlock. Quest line, take 6 damage on your turns, reward lifesteal, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. And after completing this part, you establish the link where the quest moves to taking 7 damage on your turns. Reward is dealing 3 damage to the enemy hero and lifesteal. And then you complete the ritual by taking 8 damage on your turns to get Blightborn Tamsin in your hand, which by its own right is a win condition. Blightborn Tamsin, 5 mana, 7/7, Battlecry for the rest of the game, damage you take on your turn damages your opponent instead. So 6 plus 7 plus 8, you need to take 21 total damage. However, you do get refunded 6 damage as you complete the first 13 damage. And 1 mana to heal for 6 and deal 6 to the opponent's face. That's not bad as a card that you start off by default. You almost, by default, will just finish the quest line of take 13. That's just tapping 7 times. And maybe you'll run a few self-damaging cards to speed it along. It's kind of cool in the sense that you can just build a fatigue deck now, because once you complete the quest, all fatigue damage you take is actually dealt to the opponent instead, which can kill them awfully fast, especially if you play the self-burning deck. Definitely a cool idea. But I do have to admit, in a meta where it's more aggro-based, it would be quite bad. But I do have to also see the value of this. In a heavy control meta, the Demon Seed looks like one of the decks that I would least want to play against, because dying to fatigue is basically inevitable. This tradable card really shows the more situational tradable aspect. It's a warrior 3 mana tradable card, which says gain 8 armor and text. I think this card exists to make Fire Sale look really, really good. I do have to say, it doesn't seem useless though, because it's true, sometimes gaining armor is something you want to do like near last, near the end of the game. So if you draw it early, you can just cycle it away, trade it away is what I should say. If you draw it in a matchup where gaining armor doesn't matter, such as control versus control, you can just trade it away. In a lot of matchups, you would just cast Shield Block for 3 mana just to draw another card. So what about if instead of casting it for 3 mana, you just paid 1 mana and traded it away for a new card? Impatient Shopkeep is a tradable card that doesn't look great. It's just a 3 mana 3/3 rush. But it's neutral, which is important. All the classes can run it, and there's a number of decks out there that could be combo decks. So having neutral tradable cards allows all of these combo decks to potentially run a card which is just 1 mana, draw a card. And in a pinch, you can play it for 3 mana to deal 3 damage to a really big threat. So it's flexible in that way that the card itself is not useless. I think this is a card that looks bad, but might actually be viable. And I think the type of deck that wants it is specifically a control deck or a combo deck. Now, Rustrot Viper, I think, is a much more easy to see good tradable card. 3 mana 3/4. Battlecry, destroy your opponent's weapon. If you thought Acidic Swamp Ooze was good, and you saw Acidic Swamp Ooze see play here and there whenever weapons got too out of hand, Rustrot Viper is so much better. And if your opponent doesn't have a weapon, just pay 1 mana and draw a different card. Furthermore, maybe the card is just decent enough on curve that you don't even trade it away. You can just play this as a 3 mana 3/4. I expect to see a lot of Rustrot Vipers, which is going to be a passive nerf to all the weapons, which is unfortunate because that leads us to the third mechanic of the set, and possibly, why they did print Rustrot Viper. It is the profession weapons, such as Ruined Mithril Rod, representing enchanting. Warlock 3 mana 0/2 weapon. After you draw 4 cards, reduce the cost of cards in your hand by 1. Lose 1 durability. Now, if you've played any amount of the standard metagame, you've seen rogues use a really good card called Octobot. And it may not have looked that good initially, but it turns out that paying 2 mana for the pretty decent chance of reducing your hand by 1 was worth it. Warlock hands are going to be bigger than rogues in general, and this has the strong possibility of going off twice. Furthermore, soul fragments do draw you 2 cards each time you draw a soul fragment. The fact that it's not a minion is both a plus and a minus. Sure, the efficient Octobot, you paid 2 mana to not only get the 1 discount, but sometimes the 1/4 was quite relevant, just to protect against your early game, whereas the Ruined Mithril Rod costs 1 more and doesn't do anything to affect the board. But it's clearly much more focused on discounting your hopefully large hand. The other profession tool seen is the Paladin's Prismatic Jewel Kit. 1 mana 0/3, after a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, give minions in your hand +1/+1 and lose 1 durability. So that is potentially 3 hand buffs. +1/+1 for only 1 mana. And this is a rare, so you could put 2 of those in your deck. I think that this card could be a build around card. And it's a pretty straightforward deck to build, I think. You put in a bunch of cards with Divine Shield, you put in cards that give Divine Shields, the cards that are good, and you put in 2 Prismatic Jewel Kit, and it probably ends up being an aggro or mid-range deck. Similar to how Rush Warrior kills you with really big cards, Prismatic Jewel Kit can give your cards really big stats, and they already have Divine Shield. And big cards plus Divine Shield is a scary combination. Priest gets a cool legendary. Dark Bishop Benedictus, 5 mana 5/6, start of game! Start of game alert! If the spells in your deck are all shadow, enter shadow form. I think this is actually a game changer also. It could start a completely new archetype. The only restriction is that the however many spells you have in your deck, they all have to be shadow. And yes, a lot of priest cards that are good are holy. And yes, it's rare for priest to have a minion-based archetype, but there's 2 different ways to build it. 1, you could actually you could put a bunch of shadow spells in your deck. Or 2, you could build your deck with only a very small amount of shadow cards, and then you just build a zoo deck, and you start off with a very strong hero power. You're basically Hunter, except your hero power can hit minions. And that's a really strong hero power. Could definitely be viable. Very small mini theme in the set. Mounts. Priest gets Elec Mount. 7 mana, give a minion +4/+7, and taunt. When it dies, summon an Elec. Spike Ridge Steed was pretty good in Paladin back in the day. Not sure how it would perform now. Might be a little too slow. Paladin always had the ability to generate a minion with the button and then put Spike Ridge Steed on it. Elec's Mount, I don't know how difficult it will be for Priest to have a small card to put the Elec's Mount on. I also don't know if Priest has the tools to have a mid-rangey deck, which is the deck archetype that you'd want to put Elec Mount in. But yes, it is a lot of stats. 22 stats total. And they both have taunt, so that is a pain to get through, assuming you don't have hard kill or silence. Maybe the card is good enough that you would be encouraged to run smaller minions, which is always good to see a card pop up which makes you want to change your deck style. Hunter's getting the Ramming Mount. Give a minion +2/+2 and immune while attacking. When it dies, summon a ram. The ram is a 2/2, which is immune while attacking. So a card that's immune while attacking is actually pretty scary. It means if you control the board early, as a hunter, you put the ramming mount up, and then you just keep ramming things until your opponent is very sad that all the minions they play just die to your immune card. If they do have an answer to your ramming mount, then you paid 3 mana for 4/4 worth of stats because the ram is also a 2/2. Furthermore, it has immune while attacking, so they potentially really want to deal with the ram as well. So yeah, Ramming Mount is going to really encourage hunters to play a 1-drop and or a 2-drop, and then follow that up with Ramming Mount. Seems good for a tempo-y start. Let's finish out the rest of the neutrals. We got this colorful fellow dancing on the mailbox. It's Mailbox Dancer, 2 mana 3/2, Battlecry, add a coin to your hand. Death Rattle, give your opponent one. Mostly a filler card, but there are decks out there where you prefer the coin to your opponent. This isn't entirely symmetrical. You get the coin first, so you get the first use. Being able to add 1 more mana to your hand for neutral, it means all the classes can do 11, or possibly even 12 mana combos now. Pandaren Importer. 2 mana 1/3, Battlecry, discover a spell that didn't start in your deck. The way I like describing this is basically you get a spell that wasn't good enough to make your deck originally. So 2 mana 1/3 to get a not so great card. When you compare this with Scorpid, Importer definitely loses out because Scorpid, that poisonous is so strong it basically kills another minion. Obviously Scorpid is really good. Maybe Pandaren Importer is good enough to also see play alongside Scorpid. I say maybe, but probably not. So Bice Brenda Baker, 4 mana 3/2. Battlecry, restore health to your hero equal to your hand size. Obviously you want to play this card when you have a lot of cards in your hand. Perhaps around 6 to 8 range. In which case it's an anti-killbot, which costs 1 less, but It has the downside that when you're in a top deck war, the Spice Bread Baker will not save you from dying. And that does happen quite often when you're up against aggro type decks, that you have to expend all your resources and you don't have a big hand size. But there is one deck out there which probably will at least test it out. That is the Handlock deck. Now they can eat some bread. Delicious. And we conclude with the ultimate card. I can't believe I saved this one for last. Peasant! 1 mana 2/1 at the start of your turn, draw a card. I mean, for this one, I will present a Darkest Timeline. Suppose you're in a meta where a bunch of the classes do not have 1 damage pings. Then Peasant is actually legitimately good. They need to have an answer for you, or you're drawing a card each turn. In that world, the Peasant can seize the means of production and just out-control your opponent, getting 2 cards each turn compared to their measly 1. Clearly a really good card to buff, because the 1 health is the main weak point of the Peasant. Good card to stick behind a taunt as well. So there's United in Stormwind, a very promising first look at the cards. Quests look cool, tradable cards look at least almost always relevant, because you can always just pay 1 mana and draw a different card instead. And the weapons for professions, those look like they could build different decks as well.